To be with Faye Sinclair, my childhood friend drugged my milk and sent me to an old man's bed. They took nude photos of me and spread them everywhere, turning me into the city's disgrace, the woman everyone wanted to ruin. My family's company crumbled overnight. Stocks plummeted, debt soared into billions, and ruin swallowed us whole. Unable to bear the shame and devastation, my parents jumped from the rooftop, leaving me an orphan in an instant. When the creditors cornered me, fists raised, ready to end my life, a man stepped in, my best friend's brother. He shielded me, knelt before me, and with tens of billions of betrothal gifts, he asked me to be his wife. I thought he was my salvation. I thought heaven had finally given me a way out. But 2 years later, I overheard a conversation that shattered my illusions. "Mr. Sinclair, your wife is 5 months pregnant and can no longer take osteoporosis medicine. It will affect the efficacy of the umbilical cord blood." "I don't understand," the assistant hesitated. "You advised Wesley to destroy your wife's innocence, to ruin her family. And now, you're planning to take her child just to save Faye? Aren't you afraid she'll find out and leave you?" Tristan exhaled a slow ring of smoke, his voice indifferent. "She won't find out. And even if she does, I'll pay her back with my life. As for the child, if she really wants one, I'll give her another." A chill ran down my spine. My salvation was never real. The man I trusted had orchestrated my downfall from the start. The assistant still hesitated. "But Faye is only your adopted sister. She has no blood ties to you. Madam has given up everything for you. Is it really worth this?" Tristan's eyes darkened. "Of course, it's worth it. Faye is the only woman I love. The world won't allow us to be together, so I'll give her happiness in the only way I can. A few lives, what do they matter?" He said it without hesitation. Without remorse. I covered my mouth, but the sobs broke through, spilling out like a dam bursting. I never imagined I would hear such words from the man I loved most. My hands trembled violently, my body overcome with emotion. The thermos slipped from my grasp, crashing onto the floor with a deafening clang. The sound sliced through the silence of the corridor like a knife. Inside, Tristan's expression shifted. He shot to his feet, striding toward the door. The moment he saw me, panic flashed in his eyes. "Wife, why are you here? Did you hear what we just said?" I had already wiped my tears away. My fingers curled tightly together to suppress the shaking. Lowering my gaze to the spilled chicken soup pooling on the cold tiles, I let out a sigh of regret. What could I have heard? I smiled faintly. My hand started shaking again the moment I got here, and I knocked over the thermos. Such a shame. I spent all morning making that soup. Tristan glanced at my trembling hands and seemed to relax. He took them on his own, his grip was warm and reassuring, an illusion of tenderness. "It's my fault," he murmured, his voice filled with guilt. "I failed to protect you, and now you suffer from this hand tremor. From now on, let the servants handle these things. My wife only needs to enjoy life." He spoke as if he cherished me. As if he cared. But I knew better now. My tremors had started after the brutal beating from the creditors. The damage had been so severe that I could no longer hold a scalpel, forcing me to abandon my career as a doctor. Over time, the tremors worsened, more persistent and uncontrollable than they should have been. Doubt had gnawed at me for years. No injury could cause this kind of lasting affliction. At times, I wondered if I had been poisoned, but that thought always seemed absurd. After all, my meals were carefully prepared by the nutritionist Tristan hired. They knew my dietary restrictions, my allergies. How could anything have been wrong? Now, the truth crashed over me like a tidal wave. Osteoporosis medication. Tristan had been feeding it to me all along, weaving weakness into my body, ensuring my hands would never be steady again. The falls, the trembling, the helplessness, he had orchestrated it all. Chapter 2. And all of this, my ruined career, my trembling hands, was just to keep me from returning to medicine, to force me into submission, all for Faye, who was also a doctor. Tristan led me into his office with the same gentle care he had always shown. He guided me to the sofa, his voice warm and indulgent. "Sit here, wife. Rest a bit." Moments later, an assistant arrived with a platter of my favorite fruits and snacks. Tristan placed his laptop in front of me, queuing up my favorite TV series. Finally, he reached out and rubbed my head affectionately. "I still have some work to finish. Be good and wait for me here, okay? Once I'm done, I'll take you out for seafood." His tone was soft, his gaze filled with love so convincing, so practiced. He turned away, settling into his chair, but barely a minute had passed when a message popped up on my screen. "Brother, my heart is getting worse. Am I dying soon? When will you give me my sister-in-law's umbilical cord blood?" My breath hitched. He had forgotten to log out of Facebook on his laptop, syncing his messages in real time. And then, right before my eyes, he responded. "Soon. In 5 days, I'll arrange a car accident. She'll believe the child died in the crash. Then, we'll use the umbilical cord blood to treat you. My Faye will be fine." A car accident. He had planned it all. The joy on his face when he learned about my pregnancy, the way he had cradled me as if I were his most precious treasure, none of it was real. He wasn't excited to become a father. He was just thrilled that he could finally save Faye. Perhaps sensing my gaze, he suddenly turned to me and flashed a reassuring smile. "Wife, just a little longer. I'll finish up soon, and then we'll go have that seafood dinner you love." His eyes were filled with sincerity, his tone dripping with affection, as if he weren't plotting my death just moments ago. I clenched my hands beneath the blanket, forcing down the rage and nausea clawing at my throat. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I scrolled through the rest of his chat with Faye. And what I saw made my blood turn to ice. "Tristan, I got my period again. My underwear is dirty. Come wash it for me." "Tristan, my sister-in-law won't be mad that we talk every day, right? We're just siblings. If she gets jealous of her sister, she's too petty." "Tristan, Wesley kept me up all night again. He's been clinging to me lately, but I still miss the days with you." "My brother is better than Wesley." "Brother, why are you pretending to be so serious? No one knows we're not really related by blood. Didn't you do enough to confront me when we were in love?" They chatted almost every day. And every time Tristan told me he was out socializing, he was actually on his way to see Faye. But that wasn't the only betrayal I uncovered. I made another discovery, one that shattered the last remnants of trust one had left. The notebook I had used to record my years of medical knowledge, the one containing unique theories and findings that could revolutionize medicine, was missing. That notebook had been my life's work, a collection of medical truths I had painstakingly practiced and refined. If I had applied for a patent, it would have been worth hundreds of billions. It disappeared on the 3rd day after I married into the Sinclair family. I searched the entire estate, desperate to find it, but it was nowhere to be seen. Tristan had told me it must have been misplaced during the move. At the time, I believed him. I never expected that he had given it to Faye. I gripped my phone tightly, my heart numb with disappointment. Without hesitation, I sent a message to a contact I had prepared long ago. "Draft a divorce agreement for me." Then, with a deep breath, I booked a flight. 3 days from now, I would leave, disappearing to the other side of the world. That evening, we had dinner at a high-end restaurant, a place we had dined at countless times before. Tristan played his usual role, the doting husband. He poured water for me, peeled shrimp with practiced ease, and even wiped the corners of my mouth with a napkin. He was so attentive, so consumed with caring for me, that he barely touched his own food. In the past, this devotion had made my heart ache for him. After a long day of work, he would still focus all his energy on me, doing everything he could to make me comfortable. Especially after I became pregnant, it was as if my only responsibility was to exist. He took care of the rest. I used to think it was love. But now, I know better. Everything he did, every tender gesture, every whispered promise, was never about me. It was about my child. Because to him, I was nothing more than a vessel. And my child's umbilical cord blood was the only thing that truly mattered. Chapter 3. That should have been the end of it. But just then, a child at the next table suddenly collapsed, his body convulsing violently as he fell off his chair. White foam frothed at his mouth, his limbs jerking uncontrollably. His family panicked, their faces stricken with fear. It was clear they had never encountered this before. Desperate, they called for help, but I knew the child wouldn't last until the ambulance arrived. Without hesitation, I stepped forward. I quickly placed chopsticks horizontally into his mouth to prevent him from biting his tongue, then began administering first aid. Slowly, his convulsions subsided, and the foaming stopped, but his eyes remained unfocused, dazed. I turned to his parents. "Take him to the hospital now while he's stable." But before they could react, Faye suddenly rushed forward. She shoved me aside, stuffed a pill into the child's mouth, and gently wiped his face with a tissue, her movements practiced and careful. Moments later, the child blinked, his consciousness returning. His family sighed in relief, their panic melting into gratitude. They turned to thank me only for Faye to step in, blocking their way. "I'm a doctor," she declared with a warm, reassuring smile. "It's my duty to save lives. I've given him medicine, and he won't have another attack. If you ever need help again, just come find me at the Pioneer Medical Center." Her words immediately captured their attention. A doctor. The one who saved their child. They showered her with thanks, their relief turning into admiration. I clenched my fists, anger simmering beneath my skin. After they left, I stepped forward and grabbed Faye's wrist. "How can epilepsy be cured with just one pill? You should have told them to go straight to the hospital. What if the child has another seizure?" I didn't yell. My voice was steady, controlled. But Faye acted as if I had struck her. Her eyes turned red, brimming with unshed tears as she ran to Tristan, her voice trembling with grievance. "Brother, why is sister-in-law like this? I was only trying to save a life, and she's accusing me instead." Tristan's gaze snapped to me, his expression darkening with impatience. "Eliza," he sighed, his tone carrying the weight of irritation. "Faye is a doctor. She knows more than you, a full-time wife. Isn't it a bit much for you to act like you know better than her?" "Yes. I am just a housewife now, someone who only knows how to make money around men, while Faye stands at the pinnacle of medicine. Even if my way of saving people was correct, who would trust an ordinary woman like me over an esteemed expert like her?" I lowered my head, swallowing the bitterness rising in my throat. The sadness pressed down on my chest, but I forced myself to stay silent. Tristan must have noticed my mood shift because he reached out, as if to comfort me, but then, Faye suddenly clutched her chest and staggered, her face twisting in pain. "Tristan, my heart, it hurts. I think my heart disease is flaring up again," she whimpered, her body collapsing dramatically onto the floor. Tristan hesitated for only a second. Even if her exaggerated act was transparent, his reaction was instinctual. Without thinking, he rushed to her side, scooped her into his arms, and carried her out. It was only when I heard the roar of the car engine outside that I realized he had left. Without me. The skies opened up, and heavy rain poured down in sheets, drenching everything in sight. I stood there in the doorway, shivering, my clothes sticking to my skin as I watched his car disappear down the road. He didn't look back. I hadn't brought an umbrella, and taxis were nowhere to be seen. With no other choice, I started walking. The road home stretched endlessly before me. The rain blurred my vision, and my body, already weakened by pregnancy, stumbled more than once. I fell hard, my palms scraping against the cold pavement, my knees bruising. But I forced myself to stand and keep going. By the time I reached home, my whole body was frozen, feverish. That night, I burned with illness, drifting in and out of consciousness. In my dazed state, I reached for my phone and dialed Tristan's number. The call connected, but instead of his voice, I heard a familiar, sweet tone. "Sister-in-law, are you looking for my brother?" Faye's voice was laced with feigned innocence, but the smugness underneath was unmistakable. "He's cooking for me right now." He doesn't have time to answer the phone. I froze. In the 2 years we had been married, Tristan had never once cooked for me. Not even when I was sick. Not even when I was carrying his child. But for Faye? Tears slipped silently down my cheeks, but I didn't bother wiping them away. I had been foolish. So foolish. I had actually thought that if I got sick in front of Faye, if she saw me weak and vulnerable, it would make Tristan realize my importance. But the truth was I had never been important to him at all. For 2 days, Tristan didn't return home. Not a single call, not even a text. Yet, Faye's social media was filled with posts, pictures, updates, little snippets of their time together. Cooking together. Eating together. Laughing together. As if she wanted the whole world to know. As if she wanted me to see. By the 3rd day, my fever had finally subsided. And just as I thought things couldn't be any more absurd, an invitation arrived. It was for Faye's award ceremony. Chapter 4. When I was a child, my mother died because of insufficient medical skills. That day, I could do nothing but watch as she slipped away. Since then, my dream had always been clear: to become a brilliant doctor, one who could conquer all diseases, one whose name would be etched in history. I had imagined standing on grand stages, receiving countless awards for my achievements in medicine. But reality was cruel. That dream never came true. Still, before I walked away from it all, I wanted to see for myself. So, I went to the award ceremony alone. As soon as I stepped inside, my eyes landed on Tristan, who was standing close to Faye, carefully adjusting her hair. His fingers lingered, his expression soft. Their faces were so close that their lips almost touched. I shouldn't have been surprised. Tristan noticed my arrival, but there was no guilt in his eyes. Instead, he merely turned to me and said, with the same practiced gentleness he always used, "I'm sorry, my wife. Faye's condition hasn't been stable these past 2 days, so I couldn't go home to take care of her." His words were an apology, but they carried no weight. I ignored him and found a seat. Seeing this, he hesitated for a moment before sitting beside me. Not long after, Faye approached, her gaze sweeping over me before she smiled sweetly and spoke in that familiar, saccharine tone, "Sister-in-law, I've always liked sitting with my brother since I was little. I still do, even now. You don't mind, right?" I met her gaze and hummed lightly, "No mind." It might have been my imagination, but I thought I saw a flicker of disappointment in Tristan's eyes. The award ceremony began. The host on stage praised Faye to the heavens, reciting her so-called achievements one by one. But with every word, my hands clenched into fists. Because every medical breakthrough they attributed to her, every brilliant discovery, had come from the knowledge recorded in my own notebook. The very notebook I had spent years filling. The audience was in awe. "Dr. Faye is incredible. She solved so many medical challenges. Look at her and her brother sitting together, they're both so good-looking. Honestly, if they weren't related, they'd make a perfect couple. Unlike that pregnant woman sitting beside them, no matter how much she tries to cover up, you can tell she looks old. And I heard her private life is a mess. She was with an old man even though she already had a husband. I don't know what Mr. Sinclair saw in her. She used to be a doctor too, right? Thank God she isn't practicing anymore. I'd feel disgusted to be treated by someone like her." The words stung, but I didn't flinch. Beside me, Tristan's expression darkened. With just one cold glance, the whispers died down. He took my hand, his grip warm and firm, as if shielding me from their words. His voice was filled with tenderness as he said, "Wife, don't listen to them. They're just jealous of our happy marriage." I looked at him. For the first time in a long time, I really looked at him. And finally, I asked the question that had been weighing on my heart. "Did you give my medical notebook to Faye?" His fingers stiffened around mine. For a brief second, guilt flickered in his eyes. But then, just as quickly, he smoothed his expression and feigned ignorance. "Wife, what are you talking about? Didn't you lose that notebook a long time ago?" Faye is smart, she wouldn't need to rely on something like that. In that moment, whatever little affection I had left for Tristan completely shattered. After the ceremony, I stood outside the garage, waiting for Tristan to bring the car around. The night air was cold, but not as cold as the realization settling in my heart. Footsteps clicked against the pavement. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Faye approached, her trophy clutched tightly in her hands, a smug smile playing on her lips. She lifted it slightly, as if to make sure I saw it sparkle under the dim light. "Eliza," she said, her tone dripping with triumph. "No matter how smart you are, no matter how talented you were in medicine, in the end, the trophy still belongs to me." She took a step closer, her eyes gleaming with malice. "I'd say you're nothing but a failure. You lost your career, and in love you're even worse. The childhood sweetheart who should have stood by your side. He betrayed you for me. And the man you married? He's nothing more than my obedient slave." Her words cut like a blade, but she wasn't finished. "Do you know who gave you to that old man?" She leaned in, lowering her voice as if savoring the moment. "It was my brother. He planned it all to make sure you could never ruin my happiness." "And your family's bankruptcy?" "That was his doing too. Every creditor who hunted you down, every moment you spent struggling to survive, it was all part of his design." I already knew the truth. But hearing it from her lips still made my chest tighten, made something inside me twist and ache. She waited for my reaction, expecting to see me crumble. Instead, I met her gaze and let out a soft laugh. "Faye," I said, tilting my head, "you can steal a trophy, a career, even a man, but no matter how high you climb, you know the truth better than anyone, don't you?" I leaned in slightly, my voice dropping to a whisper. "You didn't earn this. You never could. And you should worry less about flaunting your stolen achievements." I let my gaze drift to the trophy in her hands before meeting her eyes again. "And more about how hard the fall will be when the truth finally catches up to you." Chapter 5. Faye's smug expression twisted in irritation, but she quickly recovered, her lips curling into a chilling smile. Her gaze dropped to my stomach, dark and venomous. "You still don't know, do you?" she whispered, her voice sickly sweet. "My brother wants to use your umbilical cord blood to save me. I told him it was the only way." I stiffened. Faye tilted her head, eyes gleaming with cruelty. "But here's the fun part. I don't have a heart disease at all." She let out a soft laugh, each word laced with malice. "I just didn't want you to have an easy life. So just sit back and watch as your child is taken from you and used for me." My heart clenched with dread. A chill ran down my spine. Before I could react, she did something unthinkable. With one swift motion, Faye raised the heavy trophy and stabbed herself in the chest. Blood splattered. Warm droplets hit my face. I froze. Tristan had just driven out of the garage. He slammed the brakes, his face turning pale as he leaped out of the car. "Faye." His voice cracked with panic as he rushed to her side, cradling her blood-soaked body. With trembling hands, Faye grabbed his sleeve, her eyes filled with unshed tears. Her voice was weak, fragile, like she was barely holding on. "Brother, don't blame sister-in-law," she gasped, each breath labored. "She just couldn't stand me winning the award. She acted on impulse." "Don't be mad at her," her lips quivered as she clutched her chest. "Brother, my heart, it hurts so much. Am I going to die?" Her performance was flawless. The blood pooling beneath her looked terrifying, but I knew the truth: her wound was shallow. It wasn't fatal. But Tristan didn't see that. His gaze snapped to me, burning with fury. "Eliza, what did Faye ever do to deserve this?" His voice was ice, his body trembling with rage. "If anything happens to her, I will never forgive you." I opened my mouth to explain, but he wasn't listening. He scooped Faye into his arms and rushed her into the car, leaving me standing there in the cold. Moments later, his men arrived. They seized me roughly, dragging me toward another car. I struggled, screamed, but it was useless. I was taken to the hospital against my will. The moment Tristan saw me again, his hands clamped down on my shoulders. His eyes were bloodshot, his face twisted with grief and anger. Faye's heart disease relapsed, he growled. She needs umbilical cord blood immediately. My breath caught. Tristan's grip tightened. Since you hurt her, you'll use yours to save her. That's only fair. He shoved me toward the doctor. I fought, twisting in his grasp, my voice shaking with desperation. She's lying. I cried. She admitted it to me herself. She doesn't have a heart disease. She planned all of this, don't believe her. But he only looked at me with deep disappointment, as if I had done something unforgivable. Eliza, he said, his tone soft but firm, when you do something wrong, you make amends. Isn't that a simple truth? I shook my head violently. Tristan, listen to me, he cut me off with a sigh, his expression weary. Faye isn't a fool. She wouldn't use her body just to deceive me. He cupped my face, wiping away my tears with his thumb, his touch unnervingly gentle. Be good, Eliza. Listen to me. Then came the words that shattered me completely. If you don't have this child, then you don't have it. We're still young, we can always have another one. No matter what, I will only love you in this life. A sob clawed its way up my throat. I begged him, pleaded for him to believe me, but he wasn't listening. With a single wave of his hand, the doctor's assistants dragged me away. The cold metal of the hospital bed pressed against my back as I was forcibly strapped down. Don't use anesthesia, Tristan ordered. Perform the cesarean directly. Terror gripped me. I screamed. I thrashed. But I was powerless against them. I felt everything. The moment the scalpel sliced into my flesh, a white-hot pain ripped through me. Agony blurred my vision, but the true torment came when I saw them pull my baby from my body. Too small. Too fragile. Too silent. My child had no chance of survival. A wretched cry tore from my lips as I reached out for him, but my arms were too weak. I could only watch, helpless, as his tiny body grew cold in the doctor's hands. The pain in my body was nothing compared to the pain in my heart. Tristan didn't stay. The moment they retrieved the umbilical cord blood, he left, rushing to Faye's side without a second glance at me. The only ones who remained were the doctors, stitching up my broken body. As soon as the wound was sutured, I forced myself out of bed, biting back the pain that burned through me. With trembling hands, I left the divorce papers on the table, cold, final, and utterly irreversible. Then, cradling my lifeless child in my arms, I walked away without looking back. At the airport, I erased every trace of the Sinclair family from my life. One by one, I deleted and blocked their contact information. Then, in one swift motion, I yanked out my phone card and tossed it into the trash, severing the last thread that tied me to them. Tristan, in this lifetime, you will never find me again. Meanwhile, in the hospital ward, Tristan was still by Faye's side, fussing over her every need. Yet, a sudden, sharp ache clenched his heart. A strange emptiness settled deep within him, a gnawing void that left him restless. For a fleeting moment, Eliza's face flashed in his mind. He couldn't understand why, but an unbearable sense of loss crept over him. And for the first time, he felt as though someone had slipped away forever. Tristan suddenly realized that he hadn't visited Eliza since the operation. A faint unease crept into his heart. How was she doing now? Had she eaten? Was she in pain? Lost in thought, he barely noticed when Faye called out weakly, her voice tinged with feigned concern. Brother, what are you thinking about? Are you worried about sister-in-law? She forced a smile. A C-section isn't that painful. I even sent her a message just now. She said she's already up and moving around. Maybe even jumping. Faye was a doctor. Tristan trusted her words without question. The weight on his chest lifted, and he let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Eliza must be fine. She was strong. Once he settled Faye, he would go back to her. After all, she had suffered too much for him. Just then, his assistant burst into the room, breathless and pale, gripping a document in his hands. "Mr. Sinclair, bad news," he panted, his voice laced with urgency. "Madam is missing. She left this for you." Chapter 6. Tristan's heart clenched. The assistant handed him the document, and his fingers trembled as he unfolded it. His gaze landed on the signature at the bottom. Eliza. A divorce agreement. His mind went blank, and in the next second, it felt as if a bucket of ice-cold water had been dumped over his head. The chill seeped into his bones, freezing him in place. Why? Why would his Eliza suddenly want to leave him? His chest tightened as a terrifying thought gripped him. Was it because he took their child away? Tristan's heart pounded violently in his chest, his voice cold and sharp as a blade. What's going on? Didn't I tell you to keep a close watch on Madam? How did she disappear? The assistant trembled under the weight of Tristan's fury. He had never seen his boss this enraged over anyone before. Shrinking back, he stammered, "And Madam must have left during our shift change. We thought she wouldn't have the strength to get out of bed after the operation, so we let our guard down. I'm sorry, Mr. Sinclair. It's my fault. If you want to punish me, I won't make excuses." Tristan's face darkened further. "Since you let her go missing, find her. If you don't bother showing your face to me again." He shoved the assistant aside and strode out, not sparing Faye a single glance. Seeing this, Faye panicked. She quickly grabbed his wrist. "Brother, sister-in-law must be angry because of the child. But don't worry, she'll be back soon. Stay with me, please? My chest hurts. Brother, don't leave me." For the first time, looking at Faye, Tristan felt an unfamiliar irritation creep up his spine. He had always indulged her, but now, something inside him snapped. Ignoring the discomfort, he pulled out his phone and sent a message to Eliza. A red exclamation mark appeared. His brows furrowed. He dialed her number. "The number you have dialed cannot be reached." His grip on the phone tightened. He called again. And again. Each time, the same response. A chilling realization sank in. He was blocked. They had fought before many times. But Eliza had never deleted his contact. Never blocked him. Never used divorce as a threat. This time, she was serious. Panic surged through him like a tidal wave. He shook off Faye's hand, his voice laced with ice. "I'm not a doctor. If your heart hurts, go find one." Faye's eyes widened in disbelief. It was the first time he had ever spoken to her so coldly. Tears welled up as she sobbed, "But you're my brother, my only family." Tristan's patience shattered. His gaze turned piercing. "I am not your brother. There's no blood relation between us. I've already given you Eliza's umbilical cord blood. That was the biggest compromise I was willing to make. If you have more problems, go to your husband. Don't ever bother me again." His voice dropped to a menacing growl. "And if I can't find Eliza, I won't let you off." Without another word, he stormed out of the ward, not once looking back. Behind him, Faye's face contorted with rage. "Eliza, you scheming bitch," she thought, her hands clenched into fists. "You dare use this method to take my brother away from me? I won't let you get what you want." Meanwhile, Tristan scoured the entire hospital, but there was no trace of Eliza. Even the surveillance footage had been tampered with. He checked frame by frame, yet there was no sign of Eliza leaving the room. Chapter 7. Tristan's anxiety mounted with each passing second. He had dispatched people to track my movements, dig through travel records, and comb through any trace of my existence, yet they found nothing. It was as if I had vanished from the face of the earth. What he didn't know was that the moment I bought my plane ticket, I had hired a top-tier hacker to erase every digital footprint. My departure, my transactions, my whereabouts, everything was wiped clean. No one would ever be able to find me. By now, I had already arrived in Italy, carrying the cold, lifeless body of my child. At a quiet funeral home, I entrusted them with his cremation. When it was done, I buried his ashes in the cemetery, inscribing the tombstone with a simple yet heartbreaking epitaph, Eliza's eldest son. I knelt before the tiny gravestone, my fingers tracing the carved words as an unbearable pain twisted in my chest. The brutal memory of that day, the cold, sterile room, the merciless scalpel, the suffocating helplessness flashed before my eyes, igniting hatred so deep it threatened to consume me. If it weren't for Tristan and Faye, my son would still be alive. He would have grown up under my protection, a bright, happy little boy. But there was no if in this world. Tristan had destroyed my family for Faye. If I let him walk away unscathed, I would be betraying not only my son but also my parents, who were watching over me from above. Just then, my phone buzzed. The hacker had sent an update. Tristan has turned the entire city upside down looking for you. He's desperate so much so that he's completely ignored Faye. I stared at the message, waiting for a reaction within myself. But there was none. No satisfaction. No pity. Just a quiet, lingering confusion. Tristan had always put Faye above everything. Time and time again, he had chosen her over me, hurting me without hesitation. Now that I was gone, shouldn't he be relieved? Shouldn't he be celebrating his newfound freedom with her? Why was he searching for me as if his life depended on it? Do men only realize a person's worth after they've lost her? It didn't matter. His regrets, his suffering, they no longer had anything to do with me. Without a second thought, I sent the hacker a file. Post everything on the domestic internet, I instructed. I want Tristan's reputation shattered. He must face the consequences of his sins. With that taken care of, I turned my focus back to myself. I sought out the most renowned medical expert in the city for a full examination. After hours of tests, the doctor's expression turned grave. The drugs in your system have severely corroded your bones, he informed me. If you had come any later, your skeletal structure would have weakened to the point where even the slightest impact could cause fractures. A chill ran down my spine. But, he continued, with the advancements in modern medicine, there's still a chance for recovery. You'll need to undergo intensive treatment, and it will take time. A long time. You must prepare yourself. I nodded, my hands clenching into fists. No matter how long it takes, I will heal. I had already lost too much. My child. My dignity. My past self. But I would not lose my future. Finally, the doctor admitted me to the hospital and assigned me to a ward on the third floor of the inpatient department. This floor had few patients, making it exceptionally quiet, just what I needed. On the third day of my hospitalization, the hacker contacted me with updates from Los Angeles. He had divided the files I sent him into 3 parts and strategically released them online. The first part was an incriminating recording, Faye's own words, spoken casually in front of the garage, admitting that Tristan had instructed Wesley to drug me, leading to my ultimate downfall. She had never expected that I would record everything she said. As soon as the audio surfaced, the Liu siblings became the center of nationwide outrage. Along with them, my so-called childhood sweetheart's family was dragged into the scandal. The internet erupted. How could anyone drug a young woman in her 20s and send her to an old man's bed? I used to admire Tristan, but to think he orchestrated all of this, disgusting. A childhood sweetheart of over 20 years, yet he turned out to be this kind of monster. You really never know what's hidden behind a familiar face. Eliza is so unlucky to have encountered these 3 beasts. He destroyed a woman's innocence, then played the role of a devoted lover and husband? Tristan must think he's some kind of tragic hero. This is beyond repulsive. How could his mother give birth to something like him? Chapter 8. The stocks of all the Sinclair family's companies, along with those of my so-called childhood sweetheart's family, plummeted overnight. Some of the smaller businesses collapsed entirely, shutting down and leaving both families with catastrophic financial losses that showed no sign of stopping. Desperate to stabilize their crumbling empire, my childhood sweetheart's parents wasted no time. That very day, they disowned him and severed all ties, sacrificing him in a last-ditch effort to salvage their company's reputation. Then came the second wave. The hacker released undeniable proof that Tristan had secretly administered osteoporosis-inducing drugs to me, stripping me of my ability to practice medicine before handing over my personal medical notes to Faye. The public's reaction was immediate and brutal. Those who once praised the Liu siblings swiftly turned against them. The backlash was so intense that Tristan was expelled from the Sinclair family, stripped of his inheritance, and cast aside like worthless trash. But the revelations weren't over yet. The hacker dropped the final bombshell, documents confirming that Faye had been adopted into the Sinclair family. She and Tristan shared no blood relation. Accompanying this was the most damning piece of all their explicit chat logs, undeniable proof that the two had been engaged in a secret affair behind my back. The last nail in their coffin? A medical report exposing Faye's biggest lie: she had never suffered from heart disease. Yet she had manipulated Tristan into stealing my umbilical cord, blood murdering my child for a non-existent condition. With each wave of evidence, the Liu siblings' reputations crumbled beyond repair. The internet erupted in collective outrage. Their personal details were leaked, and their phones were flooded with relentless hate calls and messages. No matter how many times they changed their numbers, they could not escape the wrath of the public. The Sinclair family, unwilling to sync with them, made a swift decision. Tristan was completely disowned, discarded like a failed chess piece. As for Faye, her downfall extended beyond the scandal. The controversy brought immense pressure upon her hospital, forcing the dean and board members to act. Not only was she fired, but in an unprecedented move, multiple hospitals joined forces to blacklist her. She was permanently barred from practicing medicine. But karma wasn't done with her yet. When Wesley discovered Faye's affair with Tristan, rage consumed him. He stormed into her home and beat her so badly that she ended up in the hospital. Her old wounds had barely healed, and after this attack, she sustained real heart damage, falling into a month-long coma. In the end, justice caught up with them all. Faye was arrested. My childhood sweetheart was sentenced to several years in prison. And as for Tristan? After being cast out by the Sinclair family, he vanished. The last I heard, the police were still hunting him down. Finally, the hacker sent me a final message. The day I chose to walk away from Tristan, I had already erased him from my heart, leaving only hatred in his place. Watching him fall from his pedestal into the depths of disgrace was the best possible outcome. Stripped of his status as the young master of the Sinclair family, he was now vulnerable. The people he had wronged in the past would surely come for him, and without his family's protection, his future was nothing but bleak. As for what happens next? I don't care. With my unwavering commitment to recovery, my body healed faster than expected. The most noticeable improvement was in my hands. The tremors that once plagued me had subsided, and I could now hold a pen with steady fingers. My attending doctor gave me the news I had been longing to hear: if I remained diligent in my rehabilitation for another year or two, I would be able to wield a scalpel once more. The thought of returning to the career I loved filled me with joy. And so, with some free time on my hands, I made my way to the cemetery. It had been 2 months since my last visit. Standing before my son's grave, I wondered if he missed me in the world hadn't. Chapter 9. I approached the tombstone with a bouquet of daisies in my arms, only to freeze in place when I noticed another bouquet resting beside it. The flowers were fresh, placed there not long ago. But I had no relatives here. No one even knew this grave belonged to my child. So who left them? A strange unease crept up my spine. My gaze darted around in suspicion until, behind a large tree, I caught sight of a familiar figure. Tristan. For a moment, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. How had he managed to evade the authorities and track me down all the way here? He looked nothing like the man I once knew. In just 2 months, he had withered into a ghost of himself, his once proud figure reduced to skin and bone, dark circles etched deeply beneath his eyes. He was no longer the high-spirited, arrogant chief referee of the Sinclair family. He was a wreck. The instant he saw me, his lifeless eyes lit up with desperate relief. He stepped forward, arms outstretched, as if to embrace me. Disgust twisted in my stomach. I recoiled immediately, my voice cold and sharp. "Stay where you are, or I'll call the police." He halted at once, panic flashing across his face. "Eliza," he pleaded, his voice hoarse. "I was wrong. I came to apologize. And I got your book back." From behind his back, he produced a familiar notebook, the one he had stolen and given to Faye. He extended it toward me, his hands trembling. "It's my fault. I was blind. I never realized that I had fallen in love with you. I was too busy hurting you for Faye." His voice cracked. "I'm not a human being." I didn't care for his apology. I snatched the book from his hands and flipped through the pages, scanning for any damage. It was intact. A quiet relief settled in my chest. Seeing that I refused to acknowledge him, he spoke again, more urgently this time. "Eliza, Faye lied to me. She told me she had a heart condition, that she needed your umbilical cord blood to survive. She was a doctor, I had no reason to doubt her." He let out a hollow laugh, his expression filled with regret. "I didn't know she was lying. I swear, I didn't. That's why I treated you like that." His voice softened. "I've done too many terrible things to you. Please, let me make it up to you." His words might have sounded sincere to someone else, but to me, they were pathetic. A cold laugh slipped past my lips. "Tristan," I said, tilting my head. "Didn't I tell you the truth before they dragged me into the operating room? You refused to believe me then. So what's the point of saying all this now?" He clenched his fists. "Eliza, it makes sense," I cut him off, my lips curling into a smirk. "You want to make it up to me." I chuckled. I never thought Tristan could sink to such a shameless level. But I had no interest in arguing with him. Instead, I pulled out my phone and called the police. Tristan's eyes widened in panic. He turned to run, but he was too slow. Within moments, the local authorities had him in custody. As they dragged him away, he cast one last lingering look at me, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "Eliza, I will come to see you again." I felt nothing. He was deported back to Los Angeles and sentenced accordingly. A hacker friend of mine kept me informed, but the news didn't bring me satisfaction. Justice had been served, but no amount of suffering on his part could bring back my family. What was the point of living in a world without them? But then, I thought of my parents, their unwavering love. I thought of my unborn child, whose life was stolen before it even began. I knew they wouldn't want me to spiral into despair. So, I chose to fight. I cooperated with the doctors, pushing through the grueling treatments. My recovery, estimated to take 2 years, was complete in just 1. My hands no longer trembled. The bones that had been shattered were stronger than before. I took up exercise and became healthier than I had ever been, even before I married Tristan. And when my body had fully healed, I reclaimed my title. Doctor. Many in the medical field were skeptical. They saw me as a housewife who had been out of touch with the profession for years. A woman who had once given up her career for marriage. But I silenced their doubts with action. Through relentless dedication, I proved my worth. Soon, I was once again holding a scalpel, saving lives. A year later, I had become a respected doctor in Italy. Under my guidance, patients who had once been told they had no hope defied their prognosis and walked out of the hospital, alive and thriving. The banners of gratitude, the letters filled with heartfelt thanks, they piled up, a testament to the lives I had touched. And then, I knew. It was time to return home. I booked the next flight to Los Angeles, carrying with me a book I had meticulously written, one filled with medical insights, breakthroughs, and knowledge that could push my country's medical field forward. It was my contribution, my legacy. The recognition I received upon my return was overwhelming. My name spread across the nation, my achievements celebrated. Years passed. Then, one day, a piece of news caught my eye. Tristan had escaped from prison. He had gone straight to Faye. No one knew the details of their altercation, but it ended in blood. Tristan had stabbed Faye to death. But instead of running, he returned to the police station and surrendered. He accepted his fate without resistance, requesting only one thing: a single phone call before his execution. And then, my phone rang. I hesitated before answering. A raspy, broken voice came through the receiver. Eliza. I know I'm not worthy of saying I love you. But I wanted you to know. I've dealt with those who have hurt you. Including myself. Silence stretched between us. Then, his final words.